Welcome back to the channel. Like and sub if you enjoy the video, thank you. Chapter 66, The Arrival of the Stranger. The following morning, Chandrapur was still basking in the afterglow of their recent success. The river flowed freely, the crops were safe, and the villagers had a renewed sense of confidence. But as the sun climbed higher in the sky, a new presence entered the village, one that would bring with it uncertainty and a sense of unease. Priya and Ravi were at the community center, planning their next steps for the village's development, when a commotion outside caught their attention. They stepped out to find a small crowd gathered at the entrance of the village, murmuring among themselves and pointing to a lone figure walking down the dusty road. The stranger was a man in his mid-30s, tall and lean, with sharp features and an air of authority. He was dressed in city clothes, a crisp white shirt and dark trousers that seemed out of place in the rural setting. He carried a leather briefcase and wore polished shoes that had clearly seen better days on the uneven terrain. As the man approached, the villagers fell silent, their curiosity mixed with caution. It wasn't often that strangers visited Chandrapur, and when they did, it was usually for a specific purpose. The man stopped in front of the crowd and looked around, his gaze sharp and assessing. He seemed to take in every detail of the village in a matter of seconds. The people, the houses, the fields in the distance. Finally, his eyes settled on Priya and Ravi, who had made their way to the front of the crowd. "Good morning," the man said, his voice smooth and confident. "My name is Vikram Sharma. I'm an independent consultant, and I've been hired to assess rural development projects in this region. I understand that Chandrapur has made significant progress in recent months, and I'm here to learn more about your initiatives." Priya and Ravi exchanged glances, unsure what to make of this unexpected visitor. They had heard of consultants being sent to rural areas by government agencies or NGOs, but Vikram's sudden appearance and vague introduction made them wary. "Welcome to Chandrapur," Priya said cautiously. "We've been working hard to improve the village's infrastructure and quality of life. But may I ask who sent you? We weren't informed about any assessment." Vikram smiled, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "I understand your concern. My visit wasn't scheduled through official channels because I prefer to conduct my assessments without any preconceived notions or influence from higher-ups. I work independently, and my reports are used to inform policy decisions at various levels." His explanation did little to ease the tension, but Priya decided to keep an open mind. "We'd be happy to show you around and discuss our projects," she said. "But I hope you understand that we're protective of our community and its achievements. We've worked hard to get where we are." "Of course," Vikram replied, his tone almost too agreeable. "I'm simply here to observe and gather information. I'm particularly interested in your solar-powered irrigation system and water purification project. From what I've heard, they're quite impressive." Ravi stepped forward, his instincts on high alert. "You can see the projects for yourself," he said, his voice steady but firm. "But if there's anything specific you're looking for, we'd appreciate it if you were upfront with us." Vikram nodded, seemingly unfazed by Ravi's directness. "I'm looking forward to learning from your experiences," he said. "Perhaps we can start with a tour?" Priya and Ravi led Vikram through the village, showing him the various projects they had implemented over the past months. As they walked, Vikram asked detailed questions about the technology they used, the funding they received, and the challenges they faced. He took notes in a sleek notebook, his pen moving swiftly as he recorded every detail. The villagers watched from a distance, still unsure of what to make of the stranger. Some whispered among themselves, wondering if Vikram's visit was a sign of good fortune or trouble. Others were more optimistic, hoping that his assessment might lead to additional support for their ongoing projects. As they reached the solar-powered irrigation system, Vikram inspected the equipment closely, his expression inscrutable. "This is impressive work," he said after a moment, "but I noticed that you recently had an issue with the water flow. How did you resolve it?" Priya explained the situation with the natural dam and how the villagers had come together to clear the blockage and restore the river's flow. Vikram listened intently, nodding as she spoke. "Resourcefulness and community effort," he remarked. "That's commendable. But have you considered the possibility of a more permanent solution to prevent future blockages? Perhaps a more advanced water management system?" Ravi frowned slightly. "We've thought about it, but our focus has been on implementing sustainable solutions that the villagers can maintain themselves. We don't want to become dependent on expensive technology or external experts. Vikram gave a slight nod, as if filing away this piece of information. I see. It's important to balance sustainability with innovation, especially in rural areas where resources are limited. The tour continued, with Vikram showing keen interest in the water purification system and the village's efforts to promote renewable energy. He asked probing questions, often pushing Priya and Ravi to consider alternative approaches or potential improvements. By the time they returned to the community center, the sun was beginning to set, casting a warm glow over the village. Vikram thanked Priya and Ravi for their time and promised to send them a copy of the report once it was complete. I'll be staying in the region for a few more days, Vikram said as he prepared to leave. If you need anything, or if you have any further information to share, don't hesitate to contact me. I believe we can learn a lot from each other. As Vikram walked away, Priya and Ravi watched him go, their minds filled with questions. Who had really sent him? What was the true purpose of his visit? And most importantly, how would his assessment impact Chandrapur's future? That night, as they discussed the day's events, Priya couldn't shake the feeling that Vikram's arrival marked the beginning of a new chapter in their journey, one that might bring both opportunities and challenges they hadn't anticipated. We need to stay vigilant, Ravi said, echoing Priya's thoughts. We've come too far to let anything or anyone disrupt what we built. Priya nodded in agreement. We'll keep an eye on him. And whatever happens, we'll face it together. With that resolve, they prepared for the days ahead, knowing that the arrival of the stranger had set in motion a series of events that would test the strength and unity of Chandrapur like never before. Chapter 67. The First Signs of Trouble. The morning after Vikram's visit dawned bright and clear, but there was an undercurrent of unease in Chandrapur. The villagers went about their daily routines, but their conversations were laced with speculation about the stranger who had come and gone so abruptly. Priya and Ravi, though outwardly calm, were similarly preoccupied, each of them replaying Vikram's questions and comments in their minds. As the day wore on, however, their attention was pulled away from their concerns about Vikram, when a series of unexpected issues began to arise across the village. It started with the water purification system. One of the villagers, Meena, came rushing to the community center, out of breath and clearly distressed. Priya, Ravi, Meena called as she approached. There's something wrong with the water. It tastes strange, like chemicals. Priya and Ravi immediately followed Meena to the water station, where a small group of villagers had already gathered. Some were holding jugs of water, their faces marked with concern. Ravi took a sample of the water and examined it closely. It appeared clear, but when he took a cautious sip, he immediately noticed a bitter, metallic taste. This isn't right, Ravi said, frowning. Something's contaminated the water. Priya quickly organized a team to check the system for any signs of malfunction or tampering. They tested the filtration units, the storage tanks, and the pipelines, but everything appeared to be in working order. The contamination remained a mystery. While they were still dealing with the water issue, another problem arose. Several farmers reported that their solar-powered irrigation systems were experiencing power fluctuations. The pumps would start and stop intermittently, and in some cases, they had stopped working altogether. Ravi hurried to the fields to inspect the systems. Once again, the equipment appeared to be functioning correctly, yet the power supply was inconsistent. It was as if something was interfering with the solar panels or the batteries, but he couldn't determine what. As the day progressed, the problems multiplied. The village's communication network, which they had recently upgraded to improve connectivity with nearby towns, began experiencing disruptions. Calls were dropping, and internet access became spotty and unreliable. Even the village's small solar streetlights started flickering on and off, casting eerie shadows in the night. By evening, the villagers were on edge. The issues were too numerous and too sudden to be mere coincidences. Whispers of sabotage began to circulate, with some villagers wondering if Vikram's visit had something to do with the sudden breakdowns. At the community center, Priya, Ravi, and the village council held an emergency meeting to discuss the situation. The room was filled with tension, and the normally calm and optimistic group was unusually somber. "This can't all be happening at once by chance," said Ramesh, one of the council members. "Someone must be behind this. But who? And why?" "We don't have any enemies," another council member, Neelam, added. "At least none that we know of. But these problems, they feel deliberate, like someone's trying to undermine everything we've worked for." Priya and Ravi exchanged worried glances. The idea that someone might be intentionally causing these issues was deeply troubling, but it was a possibility they couldn't ignore. "We need to get to the bottom of this," Priya said, her voice resolute. "If there's sabotage happening, we have to find out who's responsible and stop them before they cause any more damage." "But where do we even start?" Neelam asked, frustration evident in her voice. "We don't have the resources to launch a full investigation, and we can't afford to lose focus on our other projects." Ravi thought for a moment, then spoke up. "We can start by closely monitoring the systems that have been affected. We'll set up teams to keep watch over the water purification system, the irrigation systems, and the communication network. If someone is tampering with them, we might be able to catch them in the act. And we should reach out to neighboring villages," Priya added. "If they've experienced similar issues, it could help us identify a pattern or a common link." The council agreed to these measures, and by the time the meeting adjourned, teams had been organized and assignments given out. Priya and Ravi, though exhausted, knew they had to stay vigilant. The village was under threat, and they couldn't afford to let their guard down. As night fell, the village was unusually quiet. The flickering streetlights cast long, wavering shadows, and the air was thick with a sense of foreboding. Priya and Ravi, along with a few other villagers, took turns keeping watch, their eyes scanning the darkness for any signs of movement or suspicious activity. Hours passed, and just when it seemed like the night would end without incident, Ravi noticed a faint glimmer of light near the water station. He quickly signaled to Priya, and the two of them quietly made their way toward the source. As they approached, they saw a figure crouched near one of the filtration units, a small toolkit open beside them. The figure was fiddling with equipment, seemingly unaware that they were being watched. Priya and Ravi exchanged a look, then moved forward together. "Stop right there," Priya called out, her voice firm. The figure froze, then slowly turned to face them. As the light fell on the person's face, Priya and Ravi were shocked to recognize one of the villagers, Amar, a quiet man who had always kept to himself. "Amar, what are you doing?" Ravi asked, bewildered. Amar looked caught between guilt and defiance. I'm sorry," he stammered. "I didn't want to do this, but I had no choice." "What do you mean?" Priya demanded, her voice softening slightly. "Why would you sabotage the water system?" Amar lowered his head, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I was approached by a man who offered me money to cause disruptions in the village. He said it was just to test the resilience of your systems, to see how you'd respond under pressure. But I didn't realize it would go this far." Priya and Ravi felt a chill run down their spines. This was no simple sabotage. It was a calculated attempt to destabilize the village. And if Amar was telling the truth, there was someone behind the scenes orchestrating these attacks. Who was this man? Ravi asked urgently. "Do you know his name?" Amar hesitated, then shook his head. He didn't give a name, but he was very professional. He seemed to know a lot about the village and its projects. "I didn't ask too many questions. I just needed the money." Priya's mind immediately went to Vikram. Could he be the man Amar was talking about? Or was there someone else pulling the strings? "We need to find this man and stop him," Priya said firmly. "Amar, you've made a mistake, but you can help us make things right. Tell us everything you know, every detail, no matter how small." Amar nodded, a look of regret in his eyes. "I'll tell you everything. I just want to fix this." As they led Amar back to the community center, Priya and Ravi knew that the challenges they were facing were far more complex than they had initially thought. The village was under attack from within, and if they didn't act quickly, everything they had built could be at risk. Chapter 68. Unraveling the Mystery. The revelations from Amar the previous night left Priya and Ravi restless and worried. As dawn broke over Chandrapur, they were already deep in discussion with the village council, strategizing their next move. Amar's confession had confirmed their worst fears. Someone with knowledge of their systems was actively trying to sabotage their progress. The question now was who and why. Amar sat nervously at the community center, his hands clasped tightly in front of him as he recounted his meetings with the mysterious man. The council members listened intently, trying to piece together the puzzle. He first approached me about a month ago. Amar explained, his voice shaky. I was in the market, and he struck up a conversation about the village's projects. He seemed well-informed, asked a lot of questions about the water purification system, the solar panels. I didn't think much of it at first. Then, a week later, he found me again and offered me money to create minor disruptions, as he put it. Did he say why he wanted you to do this? Priya asked, her tone gentle but probing. Amar shook his head. He said it was just a test, to see how resilient the village's systems were. He made it sound harmless, like it was for some kind of study. But the more I did, the more it felt wrong. When the water started tasting strange and the irrigation systems failed, I knew I'd crossed a line, but I didn't know how to get out of it. Did he ever mention his name? Or where he was staying? Ravi pressed. No, Amar replied, looking down. He was careful about that. He never gave a name, and when we met, it was always in busy places, where no one would notice us talking. I think he might have been staying somewhere outside the village, but I don't know where. The council members exchanged uneasy glances. Whoever this man was, he was clearly operating with a level of caution and professionalism that suggested he had experience in such matters. We need to find this man before he does any more damage, Ramesh said, his voice firm. But we can't do it alone. We should alert the authorities, let them know what's happening. Priya nodded in agreement. We'll contact the local police and explain the situation. But we can't just wait for them to act. We need to keep an eye out ourselves, especially for anyone suspicious hanging around the village or asking too many questions. The council quickly put together a plan. They would increase surveillance around the key infrastructure points, the water purification system, the solar panels, the irrigation pumps, and organize rotating patrols to monitor the village at night. Amar, hoping to make amends, offered to assist with the patrols and help repair the systems he had tampered with. As the day wore on, Priya and Ravi coordinated the efforts, making sure everyone knew their roles and responsibilities. They also took the time to speak with the villagers, reassuring them that the situation was under control and that steps were being taken to protect the village. Despite their best efforts to maintain calm, the mood in Chandrapur remained tense. The villagers were on edge, their trust shaken by the sudden wave of disruptions. Rumors continued to swirl about who might be behind the sabotage, with some speculating that it could be a rival village or a disgruntled former resident. Priya and Ravi, however, were focused on a different suspect, Vikram Sharma. The timing of his visit, combined with the nature of his questions, made him a person of interest. But without concrete evidence, they couldn't confront him directly. Instead, they decided to gather as much information as possible. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Priya and Ravi sat down to draft a report for the local authorities, detailing everything they knew so far. As they worked, they discussed their suspicions about Vikram. There's something off about him, Priya said, her brow furrowed in concentration. He seemed too interested in our systems, almost like he was probing for weaknesses. I agree, Ravi replied, but we need proof. If he's behind this, he's covering his tracks well. We need to find a way to link him to Amar or the disruptions. As they finalized the report, a knock on the door interrupted their conversation. It was Neelam, one of the council members, looking flustered. There's someone here to see you, Neelam said, her voice tinged with urgency. He says it's important. Priya and Ravi exchanged a glance before following Neelam to the entrance. Standing in the dim light was a man they didn't recognize, a tall, wiry figure with a weathered face and piercing eyes. He looked like he had traveled a long way, his clothes dusty and his boots worn. Good evening, the man said, his voice gravelly but polite. My name is Inspector Suresh. I'm with the local police, and I believe we need to have a conversation about what's been happening in Chandrapur. Priya and Ravi's hearts leaped with a mixture of hope and apprehension. They hadn't yet contacted the authorities, so how had this inspector found his way to their village? Inspector Suresh, please come in, Priya said, gesturing for him to enter. We were just about to send a report to the police. How did you know to come here? The inspector gave a small, knowing smile as he stepped inside. Let's just say that word travels fast in these parts. I've been following some leads on suspicious activities in the region, and Chandrapur seemed to be at the center of it all. But I need your help to fill in the gaps. As they sat down to talk, Priya and Ravi realized that this inspector might be the ally they needed to unravel the mystery and protect their village. They spent the next hour recounting everything they had learned, the sudden disruptions, Amar's confession, and their suspicions about Vikram Sharma. Inspector Suresh listened carefully, occasionally jotting down notes in a small, battered notebook. When they finished, he leaned back in his chair, deep in thought. This Vikram Sharma is interesting, the inspector said after a moment. He fits the profile of someone who might be behind this kind of sabotage, someone who knows how to blend in, gather information, and cause disruption without leaving a trace. But we need more than just suspicions. We need solid evidence. Do you have any ideas on how we can get that evidence? Ravi asked. The inspector nodded. We'll need to be strategic. First, I'll put out some feelers in the nearby towns and see if anyone recognizes Vikram's description or even seen in the area recently. Meanwhile, you should continue your patrols and keep a close eye on your systems. If Vikram or anyone else makes another move, we need to catch them in the act. Priya and Ravi agreed to plan, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. With Inspector Suresh on their side, they had a better chance of uncovering the truth and stopping the sabotage. As the night deepened, the village settled into an uneasy quiet. But Priya, Ravi, and the inspector were far from idle. They were determined to protect Chandrapur no matter what it took. And as they prepared for the days ahead, they knew one thing for certain. The game was far from over. The mysterious saboteur might have the upper hand now, but with careful planning and a little bit of luck, they would turn the tables and expose the mastermind behind the attacks. Chapter 69, A Game of Cat and Mouse. The following day, Chandrapur was buzzing with the news that a police inspector was now involved in the investigation. While some villagers were reassured by Inspector Suresh's presence, others were still uneasy, knowing that whoever was behind the sabotage was still out there, watching, waiting for their next move. Priya, Ravi, and Inspector Suresh worked closely together, sharing updates and refining their plan to catch the saboteur. Suresh had already started making discreet inquiries in the neighboring towns, hoping to trace Vikram Sharma's movements and gather more information about his possible connections. Meanwhile, Priya and Ravi focused on tightening security around the village. They increased the number of patrols, both day and night, and installed temporary cameras around the key infrastructure points to monitor any unusual activity. Amar, under the watchful eye of the village council, worked to repair the systems he had tampered with and to ensure they were running smoothly again. As the days passed, the tension in Chandrapur grew. The villagers went about their routines, but there was an undercurrent of anxiety in every interaction. It was as if they were all waiting for the other shoe to drop. And then, one evening, something happened that set everyone on edge. Priya and Ravi were at the community center, reviewing the footage from the surveillance cameras. The day had been uneventful, with no signs of trouble, and they were about to call it night when they noticed something strange on the screen. One of the cameras, positioned near the water purification system, showed a shadowy figure moving around the area. The figure was careful to stay out of direct view, but their movements were deliberate, as if they were searching for something or someone. "Do you see that?" Ravi said, leaning closer to the screen. Priya nodded, her heart pounding. "Someone's there. They're trying to stay hidden." Without wasting a moment, Priya grabbed her phone and called Inspector Suresh, who was stationed nearby. "Inspector, we've got movement near the water system. Someone's there, but they're being careful to avoid the cameras." "I'm on my way," Suresh replied, his voice calm but urgent. "Keep an eye on them, but don't engage. We need to catch them in the act." Priya and Ravi continued to watch the screen, their eyes fixed on the figure's every move. The person seemed to be examining the area, possibly looking for a way to sabotage the system again. They moved with practiced stealth, clearly aware of the camera placements and trying to avoid being seen too clearly. Minutes felt like hours as they waited for Inspector Suresh to arrive. Finally, they saw a flicker of movement on another camera, Suresh and a few other villagers approaching the area from different directions, attempting to corner the intruder. The figure on the screen seemed to sense that something was wrong. They froze for a moment, then abruptly turned and bolted toward the edge of the camera's view. Priya's heart sank as she realized the person was trying to escape. "Inspector, they're making a run for it." Priya shouted into the phone. "We're on it." Suresh responded, his voice tense. "Don't lose sight of them." Priya and Ravi watched helplessly as the figure disappeared from the camera's range. They switched to another feed, hoping to catch a glimpse of where the person was heading. But there was nothing, just empty, moonlit fields. Moments later, Suresh's voice crackled through the phone again. "We lost them. They were too fast, knew the area too well. But we found something near the water system. I need you both to come here." Priya and Ravi hurried to the water purification system, where they found Suresh and his team inspecting the area. On the ground near one of the filtration units, they saw what had caught Suresh's attention, a small metallic device partially hidden in the grass. Suresh carefully picked it up with gloved hands, examining it closely. "This looks like some kind of transmitter or signal disruptor," he said. "It could be what's been causing the interference with your systems. If we can trace where it came from, it might lead us to whoever's behind this." Ravi stared at the device, a mix of anger and determination in his eyes. "They're getting bolder. This wasn't just a random act. They were here to plant this, to cause more problems." Priya nodded in agreement. "We need to analyze it, find out what it does and where it came from. Maybe it will give us the lead we need to catch them." Suresh agreed and pocketed the device for further examination. "I'll take this back to the station and have it analyzed. In the meantime, keep up the patrols and the surveillance. They've shown their hand, but they're not done yet." As they walked back to the village, Priya and Ravi couldn't shake the feeling that the saboteur was still out there, watching them. The game of cat and mouse was intensifying, and the stakes were higher than ever. They were no longer just defending their village from random acts of sabotage. They were dealing with a calculated and persistent threat. Later that night, as Priya and Ravi sat in their office, reviewing the events of the evening, they couldn't help but feel a sense of urgency. The saboteur was still at large, and they were running out of time to catch them before they caused more harm. "We're close, Ravi," Priya said, her voice firm. "We just need one more piece of the puzzle, one more lead that will point us in the right direction." Ravi nodded, his jaw set with determination. "We'll find it. We have to. For the village, for everything we built." As the night deepened and the village fell into an uneasy sleep, Priya and Ravi knew they were on the verge of a breakthrough. But with every step they took closer to the truth, the danger grew more real, and the lines between hunter and hunted began to blur. The next move was theirs, but they had to be careful. One wrong step, and the saboteur could slip through their fingers, leaving Chandrapur vulnerable once again.